50%. That's the return Charles Ponzi promised investors in 1919. In 45 days, shorter than a typical savings bond term. The stock market then, lucky to give you 5% in a year, Ponzi's scheme worked. For a while, it grew so fast that by July 1920, he was taking in millions a week. Banks lined up to partner with him. The press called him a financial wizard. He won. By every measure, he won. And that is what makes it so unsettling. How did a blueprint that is mathematically doomed to collapse end up controlling the system everyone else depends on? The answer is not about greed, it's about geometry. This is the story of the Ponzi scheme and why it keeps coming back. Picture the world in 1919. The Great War has just ended. Factories are retooling, soldiers are coming home, and the average person has few ways to grow their savings. You put money in a bank, you get a few percent a year, if you're lucky. You buy a bond, you wait a decade for a modest return. The stock market? It's for the rich, the insiders, the ones who already have a fortune. For everyone else, wealth is a slow grind, a lifetime of work, a small pension, maybe a house. That's the ceiling. But then you hear a whisper. A man in Boston, an Italian immigrant, no less, has found a loophole. He's buying international postal reply coupons in one country, redeeming them in another, and pocketing the difference. A simple arbitrage. And he's offering you a piece of it. 50% return in 45 days. That's 10 times the average stock market return in a year in just 6 weeks. Shorter than a typical 2-month savings bond term. You do the math. You don't need to be a financier to see it. You just need to believe, and you do believe, because the man is paying out. Early investors get their money back, plus the promised profit, right on time. They tell their friends. Their friends tell their friends. The line outside his office grows. The money pours in. Charles Ponzi doesn't have a product. He doesn't have a factory. He doesn't have a real business. He has a promise, and a growing pile of cash from new investors to pay the old ones. It works, as long as the new investors keep coming. But one bet changed everything. The first payouts hit like a thunderclap. A man who had nothing suddenly hands you back your money, plus a fortune. You tell your neighbor, your cousin, your priest. Within weeks, the line outside that rented Boston office stretches down the block. Charles Ponzi doesn't need to sell anymore. His investors do it for him. They become walking billboards, desperate to believe the miracle is real. That is the moat, not a product, not a patent. A shared delusion, reinforced by every smiling face that cashes a check. But here's the trap. To keep the delusion alive, you must pay everyone on time. Every 45 days, the same promise. So Ponzi takes the new money, the flood of cash from the latest converts, and hands it straight to the earlier believers. No investment, no trade, just a shell game with a growing crowd. The system feels invincible because the crowd keeps growing. Each new investor validates the last. The moat deepens with every handshake. Yet that strength hid a vulnerability. The moat was built on faith, not math. And faith, unlike compound interest, has a limit. Subscribe for one hidden monopoly, taken apart, every week. The blueprint doesn't just steal money, it steals trust. You hand over your savings because the promise feels solid. 50% returns, 10 times the average stock market return in a year. 45 days later, you get paid. Shorter than a typical 2-month savings bond term. So you reinvest, you tell your friends, the machine hums. But the machine has no engine, no factory, no product, no profit. Just a queue of new investors feeding the old ones. That queue must grow forever, exponential. And exponential always breaks. Charles Ponzi's original scheme collapsed in 1920, but the blueprint survived, it mutated. Bernie Madoff ran one of the largest in history. A quiet, decades-long illusion that unraveled when the market turned and investors wanted their money back. The same math, the same end. Modern crypto frauds follow the same model. They wrap the promise in technology, in jargon, in hype. But the geometry is identical. Early believers get paid by later believers. The system works until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, the cost isn't just financial. It's the neighbor who lost retirement, the friend who stopped answering calls, the trust that evaporates from legitimate markets. Therefore, the real cost of the choke point is invisible. It's the suspicion that every high return hides a lie, that every easy gain is a trap. The blueprint controls the system because it exploits the most human thing, hope. And hope, when weaponized, doesn't need real profits. It just needs new believers. So who's running the next one? The turning point arrives when the math catches up. That promised 50% return, 10 times the average stock market in a year, paid out in just 45 days, shorter than a typical savings bond term. It feels like magic. But magic has a cost. Every dollar you get back came from someone else's fresh deposit. No product, no profit, just a chain of belief. So how did this blueprint end up controlling the system everyone else depends on? Because it doesn't look like a scam at first. It looks like a miracle. Charles Ponzi sat in a rented Boston office in December 1919, and within months, thousands lined up. They saw others get paid. They trusted. They doubled down. And the machine hummed until the new money slowed. Then it stopped. Then it reversed. The lesson is brutal and simple. Any promise of guaranteed high returns with no real underlying profit is a Ponzi. It doesn't matter if it's stamps, hedge funds, or crypto tokens. The geometry is the same. You need an infinite stream of believers, but the world is finite. So the collapse is not a bug, it's the only possible ending. And that's the unsettling truth. The blueprint doesn't die. It just finds a new name, a new face, a new promise. So who's running the next one? And are you already in it? This was the Monopoly Matrix.